Love horror movies, haunted houses, creepy cult classics? Love a good drink while you scream? Then you need to check out Spooky Sips, the podcast where three spooky-loving ladies dive into horror movies old and new, all while sipping on some delicious spirits of their own. From slashers and slow burns to final girls and found footage, they bring the laughs, the screams, and the cocktails every 2 weeks. So grab your glass, hit play, and join the watch party because horror is better with friends, and maybe a little wine. New episodes every other Thursday. Listen to Spooky Sips wherever you get your podcasts.
Research and recording of Canadian creepies happens on the shared land and traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties. A key treaty governing this territory is the Dish with One Spoon Agreement. This treaty between the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, and Haudenosaunee people binds them to share and protect the land. Subsequent Indigenous nations and peoples, settlers, and all newcomers have been invited into this treaty in the spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. We all share the responsibility of ensuring the dish is never empty, meaning we must take care of the land and the creatures we share it with.
Welcome, wanderers, to Journey Down the Crooked Path, a place where the stories are stranger, the shadows stretch longer, and the things that go bump in the night might just be listening. I'm Amanda Joy, your guide into the eerie, the forgotten, and the downright bizarre. Here, we step off the well-lit roads of Canadian creepies and venture into the murky corners of history, folklore, and the unexplained, where the whispers grow louder and the truth is never quite what it seems. So let's take a deep breath, watch your step, and whatever you do, don't look back. Once you start down the crooked path, you never know what might follow.
There are all different kinds of ghosts and hauntings. For example, a residual haunting is almost like an emotional record that keeps playing itself back in one certain place. Reports of these describe these hauntings as including footsteps and repeated sounds or voices, and repeated visual impressions. These often have no interaction or even recognize that there's a living person around. There are orbs, which usually appear in photos or videos. They are small glowing balls of light that are often interpreted as concentrated pockets of energy. People who believe in them see these lights as a sign of a presence moving through an area, although many investigators will remind you to be aware that dust, bugs, and reflections can all create a similar effect. And then you have the ladies. There are tons of different folklore all over the world about ladies in white, or in blue, or some other color. A lady in white is the most widespread figures in hauntings. She's usually bound to a place by grief or betrayal, usually a tragic death, and is seen in a flowing white gown. She can usually be found near highways, bridges, or old homesteads. A lady in black is a darker counterpart to the lady in white archetype, and she appears in folklore across Europe, North America, and parts of Latin America. She is usually described as a solitary woman dressed in deep black clothing, sometimes in mourning attire. Unlike the lady in white, who is often tied to tragic love or searching for someone that she's lost, the lady in black is more closely associated with sorrow. She is often more aggressive figure and can be found among cemeteries or historical sites where death and heartbreak has occurred. A lady in blue is more connected to devotion. She is more calm and gentle, and she will interact with the living. She can be found in old theaters and coastal areas. And finally, a lady in red. She is one of the most striking among the ghostly ladies. She is connected to love and jealousy, a life cut short during a moment of intense emotion, a jilted lover type. She's the most dramatic, with a bold presence, and usually tied to hotels and dance halls, as well as other older historical buildings. Which brings us to the Fairmont Hotel in Vancouver, British Columbia. If you spent any time in downtown Vancouver, you've probably seen the Fairmont Hotel. even if you didn't recognize it. It's that copper-roofed landmark on West Georgia Street, right in the middle of the financial district. The hotel opened in 1939, but its story starts about a decade earlier. Canadian National Railway had begun construction in 1929, planning another one of those grand railway hotels that were popping up all across Canada. Then the Great Depression hit, and the whole project stalled with just the steel frame standing. It sat there like that for years until the CN partnered with the Canadian Pacific Railway to finally finish it, just in time for King George VI and Queen Elizabeth's visit in 1939. Architects John Smith Archibald and John Schofield designed it in that chateau-esque style that you see in so many of Canada's historical railway hotels. Steep copper roofs, carved stonework, domers, gargoyles, Renaissance details, all layered onto a steel frame. A team of artists was even brought in to complete the decorative work, and the building quickly became one of the city's defining structures. At 17 stories, it was the tallest building in Vancouver until 1972. The location couldn't be more central. The Vancouver Art Gallery sits right next door, Robson Square is steps away, and Christchurch Cathedral, the city's oldest church, is literally across the street. There are 2 SkyTrain stations within a short walk as well, which makes sense for a hotel that was originally built by a railway company. Now, over the years, the hotel has been more than just a place to sleep. CBC Radio once operated from inside the building. The Panorama Roof Ballroom became a cultural hub, launching the career of bandleader Doll Richards and even introducing a young Juliet to audiences. Ownership has shifted several times throughout the 20th century. CN eventually took full control and then sold the property to the Canadian Pacific Hotels in 1988. When the company rebranded as Fairmont Hotels and Resorts in 2001, the hotel took on the name of Fairmont. It's changed hands since, but Fairmont still manages it today. Ahead of its 80th anniversary, the hotel went through major renovations, a $12 million update to the lobby, restaurant, and guest rooms, bringing the interior forward while keeping the building's historical character intact. Now's a good time for me to introduce you to Jennie Pearl Cox, known simply as Pearl to the people who loved her. She first stepped into the hotel during Christmas of 1939. The hotel had only been open for a few months at this point, fresh from its royal debut by King George VI and Queen Elizabeth, and it immediately became the place where Vancouver gathered. Business leaders, socialites, families celebrating milestones. Everyone passed through those doors. For Pearl, her husband Harold, and their 6-year-old daughter Dottie, that first Christmas visit became something more than just a holiday tradition. It became the setting for some of the happiest years of their lives. Vancouver was shaking off the weight of the Depression, and the war felt distant for a moment, and the city was finally starting to celebrate again. Dressmakers and tailors were busy, and Pearl had a red gown made for an occasion, paired with a white stole that she adored. The hotel itself was dressed for the season. There was a towering Christmas tree in the lobby, garlands lining the hallways, banquet tables overflowing. The Pacific Ballroom was alive with music and dancing, and the whole night carried that feeling of a city exhaling after years of strain. For the Cox family, it was unforgettable, so much so that they returned every Christmas for the next 5 years. In the summer of 1944, everything changed. After a picnic outside, the family was involved in a collision with a truck on their way home. All 3 were killed instantly in front of the hotel. But the story doesn't end there, at least not in the way most stories do. Over the decades, guests and staff at the hotel have spoken about this presence from those joyful years. A woman in a red gown, glimpsed in the hallways or reflected in mirrors. She's always serene, never threatening, and many people believe that this is Pearl, returning to the place where she felt most at peace, reliving the moments that defined her happiest memories. Reports of the Fairmont Lady in Red continued long after those early stories connected to Pearl Cox. Over the years, several people inside the hotel have described encounters, and that became part of the building's folklore. One of the most circulated accounts came from the television crew working on The X-Files. While filming at the hotel, a camera operator said that he saw a woman in a red dress outside of the window, several floors up. The sight startled him enough that he left his equipment behind and refused to continue working in the area. Now, if you're not familiar with The X-Files, it's a show that deals with paranormal themes. But this was an incident that happened off script during a routine production. But this isn't where the hotel's connection to The X-Files ends. The series ran for 11 seasons, and the hotel appeared in multiple episodes. The crew members' experience became a part of the show's behind-the-scene lore. In this case, the line between fiction and real world really did blur. Guests have reported similar moments. A young Japanese couple once entered their room and saw a woman standing inside. She disappeared immediately, leaving them unsure of what they had actually walked in on. They later described her as calm and observing them, not aggressive or threatening. Now, of course, the hotel employees have their own stories. A houseman reported seeing a woman in red walk down the hall and vanish through a wall. Another staff encountered elevator number 8 opening on its own, even though it was not in service. He turned the corner just as the doors were closing, but the elevator was not supposed to be operating at all. In 2017, a Vancouver resident named Scott Graham photographed what looked like a woman in a red dress standing at a window in the 16th floor. The image circulated around very rapidly through very mainstream media sources, and many people assumed that this was in fact evidence of the lady in red. However, later it was confirmed that the upper floors were under renovation and the figure was a red tarp positioned near the window.
You. Still haunting the same old fast fashion? Time to dig up something better with Back from the Dead Goods, a Canadian small business where forgotten threads get a second life and sustainability meets spooky. This isn't just upcycled clothing, it's resurrected fashion with an eerie edge. Handpicked, reworked, and revived, every piece is as unique as a ghost story whispered at midnight. And because you're a part of the Canadian Creepies family, you get an exclusive deal. Use code Canadian Creepies at checkout for 10% off. Find them lurking on Instagram, Etsy, and Poshmark. Links are in the episode description. Give your wardrobe a second chance at life, if you dare. Looking for your next obsession? The Creators Collective Podcasts is your gateway to the dark, the chilling, and the downright fascinating. We're a community of independent podcasts with one goal: to share the best in true crime, paranormal tales, folklore, and unexplained mysteries. Whether you crave cold cases that won't stay closed, haunted histories that refuse to be forgotten, or stories that make you sleep with the lights on, there's a show waiting for you in the collective. And when you join us, you're not just listening to one podcast. You're stepping into a world of creators who love this stuff as much as you do. Check out the Creators Collective today. Follow the link in our show notes to discover your next favorite podcast. We'll be waiting for you. This episode is brought to you by Fable and Frame Creative. Fable and Frame was born from a simple belief that every life holds a story worth telling. Not just the big moments, but the quiet ones too. The laughter you didn't plan, the love that feels familiar, the chapters that make your story unmistakably yours. At Fable and Frame, photography isn't about stiff poses or perfect smiles. It's about capturing what it felt like to be there. Whether it's a wind-swept elopement, a generational portrait, or the heart behind a small business, every session is approached with care, clarity, and a deep respect for the story being told. Because your life isn't ordinary, it's a fable, and it deserves to be framed like one. You can learn more or book your own chapter at fableandframecreative.com. Let's take a moment during this break to talk about something that matters, something that doesn't get to be background noise. The Anishinaabe-Moan word, Nikinagana, means we are all related, and we are. But relationship isn't just about words, it's about responsibility. Canadian author Naomi Klein once said, "It is not enough to say that we live on Indigenous land. We have to act as if we do." And one way to do that is by supporting Pay Your Rent, a grassroots mutual aid initiative that offers direct material support to Indigenous organizers across this land. It's not charity, it's rent. For those of us who aren't Indigenous to this place, it's a way to show up differently, to redistribute some of what's been taken. The Pay Your Rent Fund started as a one-time request for help in 2018 and grew into a nonprofit called Ni Ki Nagana. Your monthly or one-time donation can help provide food, hygiene supplies, housing support, and resources for Indigenous-led resistance and community care. So if you've ever said, "We're all related," ask yourself, are you being a good relative? Visit payyourrent.ca and find out more about how you can be part of something better. Now, back to this case.
Whether the Lady in Red is based on a real person, though, remains a debate. Some people believe that Jennie Pearl Cox never existed, and that the story was created simply as a marketing device. There are questions about her death, her burial, and whether any official records can confirm her identity. Others say that the consistency of the sightings and the long history of reports from unrelated witnesses points to actual evidence that somebody died there. The Vancouver archives hold documents that could clarify the truth, but many visitors prefer to keep the mystery as it is. As for the hotel, it acknowledges the legend openly. Rebecca McDonald, the marketing and public relations manager, has spoken about the Red Lady and how the story contributes to the hotel's character. Each October, the Notch 8 bar and restaurant serves a cocktail named after Jennie Cox, keeping the tradition connected to the building's history and its ongoing fascination with the paranormal. And while she may be one of Canada's more famous female ghosts, Pearl's not the only Lady in Red that haunts the country. Lower Bay Station sits under Bay Station, Toronto. It opened in February of 1966 during routing tests the TTC ran that year. The test involved 3 separate patterns. One became the Bloor-Danforth line. The 2 other linked the Bloor-Danforth line to the Yonge University line. The test ended in September of 1966, and the lower platform closed. After that, the space was used for operation training and for film shoots that needed a subway setting. The first reports about a woman in a red dress came from TTC employees who worked in the tunnel areas connected to the lower platform. The workers would describe a woman wearing formal clothing. They say that she would appear in the tunnel and the areas of the stairwell that led to the sealed levels. Several employees would claim that she has no visible legs. She appears for short periods of time, maybe 30 seconds, and then she just vanishes. Employees who report these encounters ask to be moved away from the tunnel afterwards. They are so freaked out. Maintenance staff, cleaners, and operators have similar descriptions and encounters. The accounts focus on the appearance of the woman in red clothing in an area close to the public. The reports do not include any sort of sound or interactions. Also in Toronto, the Royal York Hotel at 100 Front Street West opened on June 1929. Ross M. McDonald designed the building, and the Canadian Pacific Railway oversaw its construction. The site had held 2 earlier hotels before the Royal York was built. The hotel sits across from Union Station and became one of the most prominent properties in downtown Toronto. Guests and staff have often reported seeing a woman in a red dress in several parts of the hotel. Many of the reports describe her in the hallways, near the elevators, and in the ballroom. The descriptions almost always focus on a woman wearing a red dress who appears without any warning and then quickly vanishes. Some guests have mentioned a sudden drop in temperature, and others claim that they hear the sound of high heels in empty hallways. A few guests have said that they have seen a woman in red reflected in mirrors and did not see anyone present when they turned around. The Ontario First Concert Hall in Hamilton, often called Hamilton Place, opened in 1973. Reports from staff and theater goers describe a woman in a red dress inside the building. The description also often includes red streaks on her cheeks that resemble tears. People have said that she appears in the auditorium, in the backstage corridors, and in the tunnels beneath the stage. Those who see her have often said that she is dressed in similar styles worn in the 1980s. The reports often focus on the appearance of the woman and the red marks down her face. Staff members have also said that small lights move through the air in different parts of the building. One account involves a floating light guiding a lost visitor through one of the tunnels and out towards an exit. Now, this building doesn't have the same longevity as some of the other buildings do, and there's no widely known individual that's linked to these reports or could explain who this woman might be. Stories about women in red clothing appear in many places and across different time periods. In the 19th century, American ghost stories included accounts of women in red gowns in rural homes, hotels, and theaters. These stories circulated in newspapers in collections of regional tales. The red color appeared in descriptions of gowns, shawls, and formal dresses. Writers used the same color when describing apparitions connected to events involving strong emotion or public attention. European stories from the same century include accounts of women in red garments who appear in castles, inns, and roadside settings. Some of these stories involve a woman seen near staircases or balconies. Others describe a woman standing near a doorway or a window. These accounts circulated in printed ghost story collections and in local histories. The phrase "lady in red" appeared in American print sources in the early 20th century. One example comes from Chicago in 1920, when newspapers reported on a woman in a red dress seen at the Drake Hotel after New Year's Eve death. The description focused on the women in formal clothing who appeared on the upper floors of the hotel. The phrase "lady in red" was used repeatedly in those reports. By the mid-20th century, paranormal anthologies began grouping these stories together. Books collected American ghost accounts included chapters that listed women in red clothing at hotels, theaters, and historical houses. John Harold Brunvan's 1981 book, The Vanishing Hitchhiker, included examples of female apparitions connected to roadside encounters, including stories where women asked for a ride and later disappeared. These accounts were linked to earlier European stories involving riders who asked to be taken to a specific location. Tourism groups and event organizers have used these stories in public programming. In Truckee, California, the historical haunted tour includes the Lady in Red connected to the Truckee Hotel. The event sells tickets each October and includes guided stops at several downtown buildings. In Tonopah, Nevada, the Mizpah Hotel includes the Lady in Red in its tours. Guests have reported finding a pearl in their room, and the hotel includes this detail in its programming. USA Today, in 2018 readers' poll, listed the Mizpah Hotel as the top haunted hotel in the United States. And this type of tourism gimmick is reflected in Canadian tourism as well. As we've already discussed, the Fairmont in Vancouver does include its story of Jennie Pearl Cox in its seasonal programming. It even offers a hotel drink themed after her and guided experiences on the 14th floor. These events appear in the hotel's promotional materials and in local media coverage as well. Podcasts, ghost-themed tours, and user-submitted reports on mobile apps have expanded the reach of these stories. Episodes of Tell Me a Ghost Story have included accounts of women in red dresses in hotels and theaters. Ghost hunting apps allow users to log the sightings, and several entries do involve a woman in red clothing in public buildings, hotels, and transportation sites. The Lady in Red shows up in Canada because the archetype arrived here with the same European ghost lore that shaped all of the earlier settler storytelling. In the 16th through 19th centuries, European accounts describe women who died through violence or injustice appearing in red, tied to the ideas of bloodshedding or mourning. The Red Lady of Leap Castle in Ireland is one of the earliest examples Canadians would have known, especially since her story became part of the Victorian spiritualist culture. Those books and pamphlets circulated widely in Canadian cities, and the image of a red-clad apparition settled into the imaginations here long before any of those local sightings were actually recorded. Victorian ghost literature pushed that motif even further, using women in red as figures tied to seduction, danger, and tragedy. When settlers brought those stories to Canada, the archetype adapted to the kinds of places that already carried emotional weight. railway hotels built by the CPR and the CNR, theaters tied to early entertainment districts, and universities with long histories of student life all became natural homes for her. These were the buildings where people were already telling stories about glamour, heartbreak, scandal, and sudden loss. So the Lady in Red blended into those settings without needing a single origin point. Canadian versions tend to follow the same outline even when the details are slightly shifted. Grand hotels lean into the glamour and tragedy angle because those spaces were designed to feel dramatic. Theaters and historical buildings often adapt her when no older folklore exists because the audience instantly understands who she's meant to be. Tourism-era hauntings sometimes introduce a radiant lead to fill narrative gaps, since she's recognizable and already carries emotional weight without needing a long backstory. She's never really tied to one woman or event. She's a template that Canada absorbed from older European traditions and reshaped through the buildings and histories that matter here. A figure whose life ended in a moment when she was meant to be seen. That image has been a part of ghost storytelling for centuries, which is why she keeps appearing in new Canadian stories and in new Canadian places. I think perhaps a part of why the Lady in Red sticks with us so much is because these ghost stories give us a place to put feelings we don't fully understand. She represents the losses that we never get over and the hurt that we don't say out loud. A ghost gives shape to all of that. And maybe that's why she keeps showing up in new stories. It's not because she's tied to one place, but because we keep reaching for her. She gives us a way to talk about grief without naming it, a way to sit with the idea that some moments stay unfinished, and some people stay with us longer than we expect. She's a reminder of that, and maybe that's why she keeps haunting us. Thanks for joining me on this eerie journey through Canada's darker corners. If you loved this episode of Canadian Creepies, be sure to follow Valerie on Instagram and TikTok at Radio Valerie and on Instagram at Canadian Creepies. She's the one behind the socials and sharing behind-the-scenes stories, creepy photos, and sneak peeks of upcoming episodes. And if you're craving even more haunted history and twisted folklore, check out my other podcast, Down the Crooked Path. You can follow that show on Instagram and TikTok at Down the Crooked Path for even more haunted history, mythical madness, and spine-tingling storytelling. Come say hi, share your own creepy encounters, and help us keep the weird alive. Until next time, stay curious and stay creepy.